Hello there, good morning and welcome to this, the WP Builds Weekly WordPress newsletter. This is number 107. It covers the WordPress news for the week commencing the 23rd of March 2020, and it was published on Monday the 30th of March 2020. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and just before we begin, the usual housekeeping if that's alright. Please head over to wpbuilds.com, and over there you're going to find pretty much everything that we produce, but I'm going to alert you to a few links. The main navigation at the top, the first link is the subscribe link. It gets you to wpbuilds.com/subscribe, and over there there's a couple of email lists, one to alert you when we produce new content, like the news that you're listening to now, and the podcasts, which we produce every Thursday, but also there's a list which will enable you to get updates, very simple plain text emails about a new product or service deal that we find out about, and there's quite a few of those coming out. You can also subscribe to us on your favourite podcast player, join our Facebook group of 2,400 plus WordPressers, all being very kind and, well, thoughtful to one another. So that's wpbuilds.com/subscribe. There's a deals link as well, and that goes to /deals, and over there you'll find a searchable, filterable list of deals. I keep saying it's a bit like Black Friday, but every day of the week, and you never know. If you're in the market for something this week, you might find a coupon code on that page. So that's /deals. And last but by no means least, wpbuilds.com/advertise if you would like your product or service putting in front of a WordPress specific audience. And somebody that's done that is Kinsta. Are you tired of unreliable or slow hosting? If so, check out Kinsta, who takes managed WordPress hosting to the next level. Powered by the Google Cloud Platform, all their plans include PHP 7, SSH and 24/7 expert support. You can migrate today for free at kinsta.com. And we really do thank them for helping us to put on the WP Builds Weekly WordPress news. Speaking of which, let's get stuck into it, shall we? We always divide our WordPress news up into different sections, and the first one, as always, is WordPress Core. Just a couple of things. It may be that by the time you listen to this news, depending on what date you get it, that WordPress 5.4 has in fact rolled out. It's due to come out on Tuesday, which is the 31st of March, but this news episode is actually coming out on Monday, the 30th, so you never know, depending on when you listen to it. But 5.4 Release Candidate 5 was released just a couple of days ago, and it really is the very, very edge now. I suspect that unless something amazingly unusual happens, by the time you wake up on Tuesday at some point, you will probably be able to roll over to 5.4, and there doesn't appear to be any factors holding it back for now. But I've linked to the article over on wordpress.org, which talks about Release Candidate 5.4. Something a bit more substantive is a post on WordPress Tavern. Justin Tadlock has a piece entitled Gutenberg 7.8 adds patterns API and continues interface cleanup. So version 7.8 of Gutenberg did land late last week. The team continues to improve the editor. They've refreshed a few things. It's not really a great big refresh, but a couple of things to mention. You can edit a post permalink now without requiring a save, and that should all just work as you'd expect. In other words, you amend the permalink and it should just save by itself without needing to click the update or save button. Users can now they can select multiple categories from the latest post blocks as opposed to just one single category, and the experimental full site editing feature now supports full screen mode, so that's really nice. We did mention in the past that a few of the icons have been tightened up and made to look a little bit nicer, and you will no doubt be seeing that when you get to version 7.8 of Gutenberg. But there's a couple of other things. For example, they've changed the ability now to preview in desktop, tablet and mobile mode. There's a little drop-down menu right next to the update or publish button entitled Preview, and you can click in there and, as I say, pick which version of the website you would like to look at, so that's really nice. And we've got lots and lots more work being done on the custom block patterns. Justin's had a bit of a play with it. He's done more than I have, so he's tinkered with it a bit and he managed to create a few things. So he says, simply put, you go into the editor, create a collection of blocks, and then click over to code view, copy the PHP code, and essentially you just copy and paste it into your functions.php file, and from that moment on you have yourself a new block pattern which you can use throughout the website. So this is really exciting times. Justin, to quote, says, I have said it before, but it bears repeating. I am excited about block patterns. I'm even more excited about the ability for plugin and theme authors to begin testing this feature by building custom patterns of their own. I foresee an explosion of creativity over the next several months and beyond, and I couldn't agree more. Okay, so there we are, only two very minor bits of WordPress Core news. The next section of the news is entitled Community, and as you may expect, for the previous few weeks and probably for the weeks to come, we'll be talking a little bit about the stories around the coronavirus. And the first one this week is over on WordPress Tavern, again just in Tadlock, a piece entitled Finding Balance in These Uncertain Times, Remote Work and Sharing Our Struggles. It begins with a little quote saying something like, we're now being told something like this. The advice from doctors and governments is practice physical distancing during this pandemic, and what remote workers say in response is, I've been preparing this for my whole life, I've got this. And Justin goes on to say that, well, yes, that may very well be the case. You may well have been preparing your whole life and working in an office and working remotely, but that doesn't mean that life can go on as normal. In other words, there are aspects of life which are going to change, and he illustrates this with talking about his journey into town and the usual things that he does of a Saturday morning and how those have been essentially completely obliterated, and how even though this is a minor thing, it's still very large to him. It's fun to be in his office during the week, but it's also very nice and invigorating to have a different balance on the weekend, and that balance has now gone away, and so the week feels skewed, and being alone and working remotely 100% of the time can be a little bit isolating. And so he makes the point that ultimately WordPress is not really the software, it's the people behind the software, and we need to be able to be vulnerable in public and to talk about these kind of things. So it's a really nice article. In a few of the comments, people actually, I think, were brought to tears by reading it, so it may well be that you would like to read it yourself. The next one comes from friend of the podcast, Mike Killen. He's been on the podcast a few times. And over on his sellyourservice.co.uk website, there's an article entitled Free Email Template, How to Deal with Customers Who Want to Cancel a Care Plan. And Mike is a bit of an expert in kind of communicating and writing copy and communicating with clients on the importance of various aspects of website building and so on and so forth, and certainly a marketing funnels expert. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of us, if we're relying on website care plans, will have noticed or will be noticing that they are drying up. And so in this article, Mike puts together a whole bunch of different things that you can, if you like, push back with, ways of maybe persuading clients that in the long run, this might not be the best idea, and how to manage the clients. Agreeing with them is basically what he's saying. He's sort of saying right from the outset, just agree with them. Don't be don't be bitter or upset by it, and then you can take it from there and offer all sorts of different things, like a different standpoint and so on and so forth. It's pretty short, and then there's an email sequence which you can get at the end, and he does make the point that there's no opt-in for that. So certainly a good point of advice if you are getting some of those emails from clients saying we would like to curtail our care plans, then this would certainly be a good place to look to get some advice. One of the things that I'm noticing is that in some respects I've got a little bit more time on my hands, and so I'm taking the opportunity to learn a variety of new things. And this came across my desk this week and I thought it was worth mentioning. It is a new course from Yoast. It's a free course. It's called the Block Editor Training Course, and it is simply that. It's a course, I think it's about 3 hours of tutorials for now, going into how to use the new block editor. I know a lot of people in the recent past, the last year or so, have been sort of having a little bit of pushback and sticking with the classic editor, and some people have decided that, maybe it's time to change. Well, if you've not really played with the block editor, this might be a good opportunity. You may have a few hours more than you did previously because of the virus and so on. And so this course covers what is the block editor, how to use the block editor, and some extras thrown in at the end. So 3 different sections. The videos range in total somewhere between 7 and 49 minutes. And really, really nice to see Yoast pushing this stuff out for free. So I've linked to the WordPress Tavern article, but they have links going out from there to find the Yoast articles and get yourself on the course. Speaking of having a bit more time on your hands, I've brought your attention to this one. It's very, very quick. I'm going to mention it only very quickly. Again, Justin Tadlock on the WordPress Tavern says, still no wood grain WP Tavern design update. So you may remember that up until very recently, WP Tavern, the website which Justin works for, had a kind of wood panel effect on both sides of the websites if you were on a large screen. And he pulled all of that out. And he's basically saying, well, one of the benefits of having a bit of a slow week in terms of news, because everything's slowed down, is that I've got a bit of time to be introspective and a bit of time to work on the WordPress Tavern website. And I thought really this was illustrative of how, if you don't have as much work on, maybe this, in the same way that Justin is working on his properties, maybe it's time for us to turn our attention to our own properties, fixing all those little bugs which have been building up, fixing all those little UI things that we know ought to have been fixed long ago, but we simply didn't have time for because we were too busy working on client websites. I think this is something that if I manage to get the time, I'm going to dedicate to on the wpbuilds.com website. We'll have to see how that works out because I've got children at home and that's proving to be, quite time consuming. But anyway, an interesting insight. Spend some time modifying your own things so that when this finally passes, which I'm sure it will, you'll be in better shape from it. The last piece in the community section that I want to draw your attention to is a post on the webdevstudios.com website entitled Community, Staying Connected to the WordPress Community. It's Christina Workman who published this on late last week. And she talks about all of the kind of isolation that we're going through. So this is a common theme among many bloggers at the moment and WordPress users. And the community, the WordPress community, as I mentioned earlier, Justin said, is really the people. It's not the software. We're figuring out new ways to get in touch. So a lot of the WordCamps, for example, have been postponed or cancelled, and many of them have figured out ways to become virtual in that sense. Same has happened to WordPress meetups. They're much more frequent and localized, kind of like mini WordCamps, which usually take place over one evening, maybe once a month or something like that. They've done the same thing. They've been able to organize the speakers so that they can dial in via Zoom or some other piece of software and so on. Also, maybe using Twitter to keep in touch with those people that you've connected with in the past because of WordPress, but haven't really had a chance to keep in touch with. That might be a good way of doing it. And of course, there's things like WP and Up, which gets a nice mention as well. So WP and Up is a charity working in the WordPress space to help people with their mental health in particular, so they can be reached out to. And of course, there's other things like Slack and various other platforms, Facebook groups, and so on. So yeah, just a nice little summation of ways to stay connected during this troubling and difficult time. The next section is called Plugins, Themes and Blocks, and I suspect that over the coming weeks we're going to be receiving lots of emails and posts all about how different plugins are accommodating the flip over to WordPress 5.4 because, as we've discussed over the last few weeks, there are a few UI changes, especially in the Gutenberg block editor. And the first one that I've got for you, and probably the only one that I'm going to mention this week, is Toolset. Toolset blocks and views updated for WordPress 5.4. Amir says, we're happy to release a maintenance release of Toolset blocks 1.1.3 and Toolset views 3.1.3. This update makes Toolset fully compatible with WordPress 5.4 and packs a number of improvements and fixes. And then he goes on to mention 3 or 4 different things that have been included. So general styling updates for the block editor in WordPress 5.4, fixed an issue when adding a field and text block in WordPress 5.4, things like that. And then a bunch of other fixes and just general improvements along the way. So this will be the first of many from a variety of different companies as they get all their ducks in a row, I'm sure. I'm sure that many of you have a backup solution for your WordPress websites, and perhaps some of you have been using BackupBuddy. Well, on the iThemes.com website, we have some news. It says, new restore backups from WP dashboard with more remote destination support in BackupBuddy 8.5.5. And they say that they've been working hard to bring a basically one-click restore option. Apparently, if you've been using their own stash repository, so you can save things into the iThemes stash, think of it a bit like their own proprietary Google Drive or Dropbox, you've been able to click a button to restore your website from backups saved to their stash. But until this point, it wasn't possible to do that if you'd stored them at different destinations. Well, now you can. There's a simple option. You click a button and it says, you restore this entire backup, and you click continue, and in theory that should be the end of it. They are also offering, I'm not entirely sure how many of these were available before, but now some further remote support destinations. So whatever it is that you can do right now, I believe it's Google Drive and Dropbox and perhaps some others. You can now have Amazon S3, you can have Dropbox V3, which I'll go into in just a moment. You can also choose SFTP and FTP locations as well. But the Dropbox V3 OAuth 2 support means that it does look like you might have to go through some kind of rejigging. If you've got things set up for Dropbox, you may well have to go from the old version to the new version. And on this particular web page, they're showing you how to walk through that. There's probably 2 or 3 minutes worth of work in this, and it shows you how to do it. So yeah, nice little update. And for BackupBuddy users, the ability to store in these multiple locations and press one button to have that restore happen is really, really nice. Beaver Builder users, you may be interested to know that Beaver Builder 2.4 Alpha is out. So an alpha is obviously pre-release software, but they're hoping to get this into a production environment as soon as the bugs have been ironed out. And with that in mind, you might like to know what some of those new features are that they're hoping to distribute, and you may find yourself in a position to help stress test this. Anyway, the new enhancements are there's a new list module, there's a new search module, there's a new login module, and a new button group module, and there's also an assistant integration, and we'll talk more about assistant in just a couple of moments. But there's also been changes made to the video module. It adds options to show the video in a lightbox and hide the player and make it sticky. Row backgrounds, you can now use embed codes, use HTML to embed videos from other sources or show sliders from other plugins. The subscribe module has also had the addition of Groundhog, which we've spoken about many times in the past. So Groundhog is a way of sending out email marketing campaigns from your WordPress website. Well, you can now subscribe people with the Beaver Builder subscribe module, and there's a whole bunch of other things as well, including a bunch of fixes. But hopefully this won't be too far around the corner if you can lend a hand with that. And speaking of Beaver Builder, as I said, they've got this new assistant tool. It's not really been in use very much by a lot of people, but they've basically come out with their version 0.3.1, so it's still very much a work in progress. But if you haven't used it, it's kind of an interesting side panel which swoops in from the right and offers you the capability to do all sorts of other things. It's kind of trying to get rid of the WordPress admin in many respects and allows you to do a whole bunch of things that you would have to do in multiple clicks. The panel slides in, you do what it is that you need to do without having to go through multiple menus, and then you make it go away. And so in this particular release, they've hardened the form control styles. They've removed the assistant button, which apparently sort of escaped into the wild when it shouldn't have done. They fixed update lists. They've made some enhancements to the publish bar, making things more prominent and so on and so forth. So just little minor things, but this looks like a really nice iteration. Version 3 came out a few days ago, and then very quickly 2 days later they released version 0.3, and then they've got 0.3.1, which I think was just really fixing the Beaver button problem. But there we go. Looks really nice. If you haven't tried it, it's definitely worth a try. It might save you a few minutes, possibly hours a week with clicking here, there, and everywhere. But it's definitely a work in progress. The final one in the community section this week is from WPMU Dev. They have their hub, which is a way of linking all of your websites and managing and updating all the plugins and themes and so on from one central hub. Well, they have a version 2 beta, which they would like people to test. And I have to say, it really does look like a great deal of work has gone into this. The article explains an awful lot about all of that. But one thing to say right from the outset is that if you're not a WPMU Dev user, previously you've been able to sign up for a 7-day free trial. Well, they've decided that really they wanted to increase this. So rather than going up to, let's say, 2 weeks or a month, you can now get 3 months of free access. There's a link right at the bottom of this post in which you can make use of that. But yeah, you've got the option to try this out for 3 months to see if you like it. But an awful lot has changed. So if you are a regular user already of the hub, you'll have to obviously opt into this, and there's a big blue button, Hub 2.0 Beta, that you can click on. But loads and loads has happened. So as an example, you can now have sort of like a thumbnail view of all of your websites. Previously, you just had a list view. The list view is still there, but you can flick between thumbnails and flick back to the list view. Speaking of the list view, it's been made much more compact, and the iconography is a little bit more easy to figure out what's going on. They've also added all of the lists to a swoop-in sidebar on the right-hand side. So if you are buried somewhere within a website and it would take you several clicks to get back to the list, then now you can just bring that sidebar in and go straight to the website of choice. They've also added a ton of options for labeling, grouping, and categorizing things. So for example, you might like to categorize certain websites in some way or other. I don't know, maybe you've got a fitness niche and you want to categorize some as being fitness and others as being real estate or whatever it might be, and you can do those and just get to those particular websites. You can also add kind of colors, and you can sort them in all sorts of ways, A to Z, Z to A, and so on and so forth. You can also so for example, if you just wanted to look at the security options for those sites, you can filter out anything else that's not related to security and just look at security, which is a nice feature. And in the future, although it's not there yet, they're going to be adding the label to add your own custom labels as well. So that's quite nice. There's also some user and role capabilities adding in. So it said, so we heard that you wanted to add your colleagues and clients to your account, and you can now do that. Also, it's possible to white label the hub. I'm not entirely sure if that's been a feature that's new or if that's been just recently added in. Anyway, there it is. If you're using WPMU Dev's hosting, it obviously all works seamlessly with that. And as I said, check out the bottom of the article in order to make use of their 3-month free trial. Have to see how long the beta testing goes, but they're hoping to push this out ASAP whenever all the bugs have been squashed. The next section is always about deals. The first couple of deals in the deals from this week section are to do with WP Builds, and what I mean by that is the first link takes you to a page where you can sign up to our deals email, and every time I hear about a deal, I'll put a short email together and send it out to you, so that's really handy. But there's also the second link is to the WP Builds deals page, which is a searchable, filterable list of all the WordPress deals that are in many ways and very often exclusive to WP Builds. So go and check that out because you might find them, and there might be no such deal anywhere else. But I've got 4 deals for you this week. 50% off Flywheel hosting. You have to click on the link and use the offer code, which is in the show notes. And there's also the deals for Mailpoet, which is available on a lifetime deal. Happy Forms, again, lifetime, and WP Foamify. They're all $49, and if you click on the link, you'll be taken to the website to redeem those. Those are stackable, so you can actually increase the amount of domains and so on for those. But yeah, so Flywheel and 3 others this week. The next section is the security section, and as always, it's a very light touch. I think there's too much to go into in depth for this. So it is just to say a few articles. The first one is on ZDNet, or I suppose ZDNet, depending on where you live in the world. And it is to say WordPress and Apache struts account for 55% of all weaponized vulnerabilities. Well, I don't suppose that's a great shock to anybody, in all honesty, given the propensity for servers to be running Apache and also websites to be using WordPress. But nevertheless, a nice little article explaining how this came to be. 2 things on WordFence. If you've used the IMpress for IDX broker plugin, then WordFence have got news about a vulnerability which apparently has been patched. And another name to think about is the data tables generator by how do we even say that? Sopsistic, that's right, plugin. So if that rings a bell, you also ought to get that done because, again, it was patched a little while ago, but you need to be mindful of what's been patched and what's happened and, see if anything's been done on your site. If you're a bit technical and you like going deep diving on how an exploit was used and so on, the WordFence website is good for those. But this week we've also got one from the WebArcs guys, webarcsecurity.com. They've got an in-depth analysis of the WP-VCD malware. It was written on March the 27th, and it goes into extraordinary detail about how it was used and exactly what was happening and how they figured out what was going on. It's a really interesting read, but I would suggest it's only for those with a tinfoil hat. And the last security one is just the plugin roundup. I do like to include these. This is the iTheme security one. We feature these largely because you can just scroll through them, look at the iconography and the names of all the plugins and make sure that you've got yourself updated. Hopefully by now you are updating all of your websites, and presumably with some piece of third-party software, something like MainWP or ManageWP, something like that, so that this is likely to, trouble you a little bit less because you should be updated all the time. But nevertheless, scroll through, see if any of those plugins are of familiarity to you, and if they are, go and get them updated right away. The next section is the blatantly self-promotional WP Builds section. Only one thing for you this week. We released a podcast. It was David and I having a debate about whether we should grow our agencies or endeavour to stay small. In other words, should growth be a deliberate thing that we always try to pursue, or is it okay to deliberately stay small? We take contrary positions, we set the debate up, and then we get into it. And it was really an interesting chat. I think it's fair to say that both David and I probably have the same opinion, but obviously for a debate we need to go on contrary sides, so we more or less flip a coin, and it was lovely. I did say at the end that if it's annoying you, this debate, and you're shouting at the screen, do get in touch. And I did have one or two people who did exactly that, said I was shouting at the screen because I was disagreeing so much with what you were saying. So that, I guess, was the purpose, to cause a debate and cause a little bit of friction. But anyway, there you go. If you've been wondering about why you should grow or why you should stay small, have a listen, see what David and I think. The next section is to do with jobs, any jobs that are in the WordPress space this week, and I've got three for you. One is a content marketer for Gravity Forms. They say they need a content marketer to write amazing content for the website, execute our content strategy, collaborate with team members, outside partners and guest contributors to hit deadlines, drive traffic, and provide value to new and current customers. Also, Defiant, which is the kind of parent organization, I believe, for WordFence. They're looking for a contract UX designer. It, I believe, is a remote working job. I don't know if you have to be based in the United States. I think possibly you do. But anyway, they need somebody to help them with their UX. And finally, a Lifter LMS customer support remote work opportunity has become available. Lifter LMS say they need somebody who can work from anywhere, have a flexible schedule, is family focused. We don't glorify workaholism, and there's a bunch of other things as well. And you can fill out a Google form. So 3 jobs for you this week. If you're in need of a job, which you may well be, given the current climate, maybe that's worth looking at. That's all the WordPress news I've got for you this week, but don't go away because we've got some non-WordPress but useful anyway news. Now, if, like me, you are getting a little bit fed up of being inside, can I suggest that you go and look at this Kickstarter project? It's a thing called Mailpoet, and basically you attach it to anything metallic. Imagine like those little ball bearing things that you've seen in the past, where a little ball bearing runs along a channel and then it falls into a bucket and it activates a little seesaw, and then another little ball falls over and knocks a ruler, and that then enables, you get the idea. Well, Mailpoet have taken this to the nth degree. They were looking for £8,000 or so as their Kickstarter. They've already raised 1.5 million. So talk about a successful project. This thing just looks fabulous. So many different bits and attachments and accoutrements. You can send ball bearings off in any which way with giant possibilities. And I looked at it and I thought, I have to have it. I confess I haven't yet given any money over to the Kickstarter project, but I am sorely tempted. So really, if you're anything like me and you like things like this and puzzles like this, it's just so brilliant. It's done all with magnets. You just clip bits to a metallic surface. So a fridge would be ideal. And it just goes, put them where you want, get it to do what you want. Wonderful stuff. Go check it out. It's called, now what is it called? It's called Mailpoet, and it looks absolutely fabulous. Perhaps during this difficult time, you're trying to drum up some new business, and a good way of doing that is offering adverts to potential customers. Google, according to the Search Engine Journal, are giving $340 million in ad credits to SMB, so small and medium-sized businesses. You need to have used actively your Google advertising account during the past year, and any ad credits that you do get have to be used up within a year, so it's not like an infinite amount of cash for an infinite amount of time. There's no word on how much the ad credits will be issued to each advertiser. You simply have to apply, and as I say, they can be carried over for just the period of this 1 year, and they can be used across the entire advertising network that Google has. So if you really are needing to put some Google ads out, then this might be completely free advertising. I feel this next one could be of great importance to many of you, depending on the way that you set cookies on particular websites. And it's on Search Engine Journal. It's entitled Safari Announces Full Third-Party Cookie Blocking. So apparently this was written on the 25th of March, so not that long ago. And it says that Safari is now blocking third-party cookies. This is a milestone that surpasses Chrome. Now, in some senses, you don't need to worry because there are certain caveats here. They're using their own proprietary technology called intelligent tracking prevention. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to work out what third-party sites you're actively using. So let's say, for example, that you're logged into PayPal and then you go to another website and it wishes to use PayPal as the way of processing payments. Well, the browser will somehow work out that you are a fully paid up member of PayPal, if you like. You've somehow signed in over there and now you're over here and the two things can talk. Same might be true of Facebook. You're actively logged into Facebook. It's pretty obvious that you're a Facebook user. And so Facebook is being used over here for commenting or so on. And so that's okay. But other things where you don't have a relationship and a service is literally just trying to set cookies and you have no idea what's being set, well, allegedly this will be stopped. It says there will be no arbitrary cookie access. So it could be a remarkable change. The announcement lists 3 key benefits. It disables cross-site request forgery attacks against websites through third-party requests. It removes the ability to use an auxiliary third-party domain to identify users. Such a setup could otherwise persist IDs even when users delete website data for the first party. And it simplifies things for developers. Now it's as easy as possible. If you need a cookie access as a third party, use the Storage Access API. It remains to be seen if things like, for example, Google Analytics does fall foul of this. And so if you're using Google Analytics and you've got users with Safari, in theory, this will be blocked. But we'll have to see. Perhaps Google has the might to figure out a way to circumvent this, or maybe there's a relationship that Apple will strike up with Google. Who knows? But for now, troubling times ahead for those people who are using third-party cookies, although don't know what the proportion of people using Safari is, but certainly it's nowhere near Chrome, so maybe not so worrying. Let's finish off with a nice piece of news this week, shall we? This is on the Guardian website, and it's to say that a man from Sidcup, which is a town in the UK, runs a marathon in his back garden. So this is fabulous. James Page, 36, did 873 laps of his garden because he still wanted to raise the £3,000 that he needed to give to a children's cancer charity. Absolutely fabulous. Allegedly, his parents both have been diagnosed with cancer over the last short period of time, and so he's been very much wanting to do this, but the UK, as much of the world is in lockdown, and so there wasn't really a chance for him to go pounding the streets and doing it in the way that he wanted to. He was training to do it as a kind of like an ultra marathon across the Sahara, but obviously that whole thing has been stymied. But never giving up, he's decided that he's going to do it in his back garden. Well, I say going to do it, he's actually succeeded. Said it wasn't as hard as he thought, but brilliant. Just a great example of people doing fabulous and interesting things, even though they are stuck in the confines of their own homes. Brilliant. Love that. Okay, that's all I've got for you this week. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know. Please do get in touch, wpbuilds.com/contact. I'd love to know if you find this useful or helpful. It's very important to me to know that I'm dishing out useful content that's of interest to you, and I appreciate any comments that come my way. The WP Builds Weekly WordPress News was brought to you by Kinsta. Kinsta takes managed WordPress hosting to the next level. Powered by the Google Cloud Platform, your site is secured like Fort Knox and runs on speed obsessive architecture. You get access to the latest software and developer tools such as PHP 7, SSH and staging environments. And the best part, their expert team of WordPress engineers are available 24/7 if you need help. You can migrate today for free at kinsta.com. Okay, hopefully we'll see you at some point during the next week. We will have a podcast on a Thursday. We'll be back for this weekly WordPress news next Monday, but also remember, we're always joined live 2 p.m. UK time for the weekly WordPress news. And this week, as always, I'll be joined with some notable WordPress guests to chat through things. So you can join us, wpbuilds.com/live for that. So if I don't see you anytime this week, please do stay safe. I hope that you have a good week. Bye-bye for now.